I never thought my own brother would sell our most private family photos to a tabloid magazine the moment I became famous. But looking back now, I should have seen it coming from the very first time my parents asked me to apologize for his mistakes. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let me know where you're listening from in the comments. My name is Sophia and I'm 27 years old. 6 months ago, I was just another struggling actress waiting tables in Los Angeles. Today, I'm what people call A-list, whatever that means. But this story isn't about my rise to fame, it's about how my own family tried to tear me down the moment I finally made it. Growing up, I was always the responsible one. My older brother Brandon was 3 years older and somehow always in trouble, while I was the one expected to keep the peace. When I was 12 and Brandon stole my birthday money, $200 I'd saved from relatives, my parents didn't punish him. Instead, they sat me down and explained that Brandon was going through a difficult time and that I needed to be more understanding. When I cried about losing money I'd planned to spend on art supplies, they made me apologize to Brandon for making him feel bad about taking it. That was the pattern that would define our entire relationship. Brandon would mess up, and somehow I'd be the one who had to fix it or apologize for it. In high school, things got worse. Brandon crashed my car, the one I'd bought with money from my part-time job at the local diner. The insurance didn't cover it because he'd been drinking, which we couldn't report because he was underage. So there I was, 16 years old, walking 2 miles to work every day to pay for the repairs on a car I couldn't even drive. When I complained about having to walk in the rain, my mom sighed and said, "Sophia, honey, you know your brother feels terrible about this. Can't you just be grateful no one got hurt?" College was supposed to be my escape, but Brandon followed me there too. Not literally, he was too busy partying to actually attend classes, but his problems always found me. While I worked 3 jobs to pay my tuition because my parents had spent my college fund on Brandon's legal fees from a DUI, he was living in their basement, smoking weed and playing video games. Every few months, my parents would call, crying, asking if I could help with Brandon's credit card debt or his car payment or his rehab costs. And like an idiot, I always said yes. When I graduated and moved to LA to pursue acting, I thought maybe distance would help. For a while, it did. I was too broke to help Brandon much, living in a studio apartment with 2 roommates and eating ramen for dinner most nights. But then I started booking small roles, a commercial here, a background part there, and suddenly Brandon's requests started again. "Hey sis, heard you booked that toothpaste commercial. Think you could spot me $500 for rent? Sophia, mom says you're doing really well. I just need a little help getting back on my feet." Every family gathering became the Brandon show. My parents would spend the entire time discussing his latest crisis while I sat there, invisible, even though I was the one actually succeeding at something. When I tried to share news about landing a recurring role on a TV show, my dad interrupted to tell me about Brandon's new job at a warehouse, which he'd quit 3 weeks later without telling them. The family group chat was the worst part. It was supposed to be for sharing family updates, but it quickly became a place where everyone ganged up on me whenever I set boundaries with Brandon. When I said I couldn't lend him money for the 4th time in 2 months, my aunt chimed in, "Family helps family, Sophia. Don't forget where you came from." My cousin added, "Some people change when they get a little success." Even my grandmother, who I thought understood me, sent a message saying I should be more generous with my blessings. Then came my breakthrough role. After 7 years of struggling, I landed the female lead in a major studio film. It wasn't just any film, it was the kind of movie that gets you noticed, the kind that changes everything. When it hit theaters, I went from nobody to somebody overnight. Magazine covers, talk show appearances, a million new Instagram followers, the whole surreal experience of sudden fame. That's when Brandon really showed his true colors. He showed up at my new apartment, the first nice place I'd ever lived, demanding I buy him a Tesla as a thank you gift for supporting my dreams all these years. When I reminded him that he'd never supported anything I did, he exploded. "You think you're better than us now," he screamed in my hallway, loud enough for my neighbors to hear. "You've forgotten where you came from. Family doesn't mean anything to you anymore." I tried to stay calm, to explain that I wasn't refusing to help family, I just needed him to be reasonable about his requests. But Brandon was beyond reason. He stormed out, slamming my door so hard it left a dent in the wall. That night, my parents called. Through tears, my mother explained that Brandon was really struggling with my success, and that maybe I could just give him the car to keep the peace. My father added that Brandon felt like I was flaunting my success and that family should come first. I was exhausted. 27 years of being the family peacekeeper, of absorbing everyone else's problems, of making excuses for Brandon's behavior. But they were my family, and despite everything, I loved them. So I agreed to one last family dinner, hoping we could finally work things out. Brandon seemed unusually calm that night, even happy. He was taking pictures throughout dinner, saying he wanted to capture these family memories now that I was famous. He seemed genuinely proud of me for the first time in our lives, asking about my experiences on set and actually listening to my answers. I thought maybe, finally, we'd turned a corner. Maybe Brandon had just needed time to adjust to my success. Maybe we could actually be a real family. I had no idea he was already planning to destroy me. I woke up to my phone buzzing like it was having a seizure. 57 missed calls, hundreds of text messages, and my publicist Riley calling again. The timestamp read 6:47 a.m. My stomach dropped before I even answered. "Sophia, where the hell have you been?" Riley's voice was sharp with panic. "We have a situation. A big one." I stumbled to my laptop, still in my pajamas, and pulled up the website she directed me to. The headline hit me like a physical blow. Exclusive: Sophia's secret shame. See the photos she doesn't want you to see. My hands started shaking as I scrolled through page after page of our family photos. Photos I'd never seen published anywhere. Photos from inside our house, from family gatherings, from the most private moments of my life. There was 7-year-old me crying over my destroyed science project. 16-year-old me looking exhausted after another double shift at the diner. 18-year-old me heartbroken on prom night. But it wasn't just the photos, it was the captions. Each one was twisted, manipulated to make me look like a spoiled, fake person who'd always thought she was better than everyone else. The prom photo, where I looked devastated because Brandon had humiliated me in front of my date, was captioned, "Even as a teenager, Sophia's dramatic tendencies were obvious. Friends say she always had to be the center of attention." At the bottom of the article was a quote that made my blood freeze: "My sister thinks she's better than us now." These photos show the real Sophia, not the perfect princess she pretends to be. Fame changed her, but I remember who she really is. It was attributed to Brandon M., Sophia's older brother. $50,000. That's what they paid him. $50,000 for 23 photos spanning my entire life, each one accompanied by lies that painted me as a narcissistic fake who'd abandoned her struggling family the moment she got famous. My phone rang again. "Mom. Honey," she said, her voice strained, "we saw the article. Brandon feels terrible about it, but you have to understand, he needed the money. His rent was due and he's been out of work for months. It's not that bad, really. People will forget about it in a few days." I couldn't speak. My own mother was defending him. Dad got on the phone. "Sophia, sweetie, you know how the media twists things. Brandon told me he specifically asked them not to make you look bad. This isn't his fault, it's those awful journalists. He sold our family photos, Dad," I whispered. "Well, yes, but honey, you have plenty of money now. This is just a rough patch for Brandon. Family helps family, remember." I hung up and immediately saw new notifications flooding my social media. My aunt had posted on Facebook, "Some people forget their family when they get famous. Money changes everything, I guess." The post had 47 likes and 12 comments, all agreeing with her. My cousin shared the article with the caption, "Guess we know what success does to some people," but the worst was Brandon's own social media post, a screenshot of the article with the caption, "Success changes people, #family, #truth, #disappointed." It had over 2,000 likes and hundreds of comments calling me everything from fake to family abandoning, which, then I started remembering. Brandon at Christmas last year, constantly taking photos. Just capturing memories, sis. Brandon at our grandmother's birthday party, his phone always out. Brandon at every family gathering for the past 2 years, documenting everything. This wasn't some desperate, last-minute decision to sell photos for rent money. This was planned, calculated. He'd been building a collection, waiting for the right moment when I'd be famous enough to make it profitable. The worst photo was the last one in the article. Me crying at our grandmother's funeral 8 months ago, looking absolutely shattered. The caption read, "Even at family funerals, Sophia made it about herself." Sources say she was more concerned with how she looked and mourning her grandmother. That photo broke something inside me. Grandma Grace was the only family member who'd ever truly understood me, who'd ever told me I wasn't responsible for fixing everyone else's problems. At her funeral, she'd been gone for 3 days and I was devastated. Brandon had captured that raw grief and sold it to strangers who turned it into proof of my selfishness. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. My agent called to tell me I'd lost the lead role in an upcoming romantic comedy because the studio thought I was inauthentic and not relatable anymore. A talk show canceled my appearance. Brand deals started falling through. Brandon gave an interview to Entertainment Tonight that night. Sitting in our parents' living room, he looked sincere and hurt as he told the interviewer, "My sister was always different, but fame made it worse. She used to care about family. Now it's like we don't even exist unless she needs something for her image." The interviewer asked about the money he'd received for the photos. Brandon's response was perfect. He'd clearly rehearsed it. "I never wanted to do this, but I've been struggling financially, and Sophia has made it clear that family isn't her priority anymore. I thought maybe if people saw the real her, she'd remember where she came from." I watched my career implode in real time. Social media was brutal. #SophiaExposed was trending. People were calling me everything from a fake to a narcissist to a family abandoning snake. The narrative was set. I was the spoiled celebrity who'd forgotten her humble roots and turned her back on her struggling family. But the comments that hurt most were from my own relatives, jumping on the bandwagon publicly. "Always knew she'd change when she got famous. Poor Brandon, having to deal with this. Money reveals people's true nature." I sat alone in my apartment that night, staring at the magazine article on my laptop screen. 27 years of family photos turned into weapons against me. 27 years of putting my family first, only to have them throw me to the wolves the moment it benefited them. That's when Riley found me, still in my pajamas, still staring at the screen with tears streaming down my face. "You know what," she said, sitting beside me on the couch. "Let's tell the real story behind these photos." I looked at her, confused and broken. She smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who'd just had a very dangerous idea. "Trust me, Sophia. It's time the world heard your side." 3 days later, I called a press conference. The media showed up expecting a typical celebrity damage control situation. Maybe an apology, maybe some tears, definitely some explanation about being misunderstood. They had no idea what was coming. I walked into that hotel ballroom carrying a manila folder and wearing my calmest smile. Every major entertainment outlet was there, cameras rolling, reporters ready to capture my downfall. I could see it in their eyes. They thought they were about to witness another celebrity meltdown. "Good morning," I said, opening the folder and pulling out the original family photos. "I want to tell you the real story behind each of these photos that my brother sold to the tabloids." I held up the first photo, 7-year-old me crying. This was taken the night before my elementary school science fair. I'd spent weeks building a volcano for the competition. I was so proud of it. That night, my brother Brandon destroyed it in a fit of rage because our parents asked him to clean his room. I was devastated, but instead of comforting me or punishing him, my parents made me apologize to Brandon for provoking him by leaving my project where he could see it. I could see the reporters starting to shift uncomfortably. This wasn't the narrative they'd expected. "This photo," I continued, holding up the image of exhausted 16-year-old me, "was taken after I'd worked a 14-hour shift at the diner. I was working 3 jobs because my parents had spent my college fund, every penny of the $18,000 my grandmother had saved for my education, on Brandon's legal fees after his second DUI. I was 16 years old, trying to save enough money to still go to college while my brother partied every night." The room was dead silent now. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, projecting it onto the screen behind me. "These are receipts showing every payment I made to help Brandon over the past 10 years. His rent, his car payments, his credit card debt, his rehab costs, twice. The total is $67,000. Money I gave freely because I believed families should help each other." I played a voicemail from my phone. Brandon's voice filled the room. "Sophia, you better send me that money by tomorrow or I swear to God, I'll make your life hell. You owe me. Without me, you'd be nothing." The reporters were furiously taking notes now, realizing they'd completely misjudged the situation. "But let me show you my favorite photo," I said, my voice hardening. I held up the prom picture where I looked heartbroken. This was taken on prom night when I was 18. My date had just left because my brother told him, in front of everyone, that I had multiple STDs and was easy. When I confronted Brandon about ruining my prom, my parents told me I should have given them advance notice about my dates so Brandon could prepare better jokes. I pulled out my phone again and played a voice message from my mother. Honey, can't you just buy Brandon the Tesla? It would make Christmas so much easier for everyone. You know how he gets when he's upset. The click of camera shutters was deafening. I could see some reporters looking genuinely angry on my behalf. Now let me tell you about this final photo, I said, holding up the image of me crying at our grandmother's funeral. My voice cracked slightly. I was crying because my grandmother, the only person in my family who ever truly loved me unconditionally, had whispered to me before she died that she was sorry for how my family treated me. She told me I deserved better and that I should never let them make me feel guilty for succeeding. This was the last conversation I had with someone who actually saw my worth. I paused, letting that sink in. My brother sold my grief. He sold my trauma. He sold every vulnerable moment I've ever had in my own home. And when confronted about it, my family's response wasn't to apologize, it was to defend him because he needed the money. I pulled out a check and held it up to the cameras. Brandon received $50,000 for these photos. I'm donating that exact amount, from my own account, to the National Center for Victims of Family Abuse. Consider it payment for the most expensive lesson I've ever learned about my own worth. The room erupted. Reporters were shouting questions, but I held up my hand. I'm not taking questions because there's nothing more to say. The truth speaks for itself. My brother spent years documenting my pain so he could profit from it the moment I became successful. My parents enabled his abuse because it was easier than holding him accountable. And my extended family publicly shamed me for setting boundaries because maintaining their comfortable delusion was more important than my well-being. I stood up, gathering my photos. This is the last time I will ever speak about my biological family publicly. As of today, they are strangers to me. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you deserve, and sometimes the best revenge is simply telling the truth. Within hours, #Sophia'sTruth was trending worldwide. The response was immediate and devastating for Brandon. His employer fired him before the press conference was even over. His girlfriend dumped him by a text message, posting screenshots of their breakup conversation where she called him disgusting and pathetic. The warehouse where he'd been working part-time released a statement saying they couldn't employ someone with such questionable character. My parents were shunned by their entire social circle. The neighbors they'd bragged to about having a famous daughter now crossed the street to avoid them. Their church asked them to take a break from their volunteer positions. But the most satisfying part, my career didn't just recover, it exploded. That press conference showed the world who I really was, someone who'd survived family abuse and come out stronger. Directors started calling specifically because they respected my authenticity. I booked 3 major films in the following month, each role specifically offered because the casting directors admired how I'd handled the situation. 6 months later, Brandon tried to approach me at a movie premiere. Security had him removed while the cameras rolled. I didn't even turn around to look at him. That footage went viral too, with people praising me for maintaining my boundaries. I blocked every family member on every platform and changed my phone number. The silence has been the most peaceful sound of my life. My real family now consists of the people who choose to love and support me, my friends, my team, the people who celebrate my successes instead of trying to profit from my pain. Sometimes the best revenge isn't elaborate or complicated. Sometimes it's just refusing to let toxic people control your narrative anymore. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and feel free to share your story or opinions in the comments.